Namaste, aloha, welcome. My name is Janapati Das, and we are here for another Krishna book reading. Thank you for joining in tonight, and please accept my respects. Let's engage in some hearing and chanting of Krishna's names right now, okay? Please join in. Namo Vishnuloka Krishna Pristaya Utare Srimati Sira Haribol. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So we are continuing in our story with Akrura coming to Vrindavan, going to Vrindavan to go get Krishna and Balaram. And on his way, he reflects and he meditates upon the glories of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Akrura then thought, when Krishna and Balaram are pleased with my prayer, certainly they will take my hand and receive me within their homes and offer me all kinds of respectable hospitalities. And they will surely ask me of the activities of Kamsa and his friends. In this way, Akrura, who was the son of Svalbhaka, meditated on Sri Krishna on his journey from Mathura. He reached Vrindavan by the end of the day. Akrura passed the whole journey without knowing how long it took. When he reached Vrindavan, the sun was setting. As soon as he entered the boundary of Vrindavan, he saw the footprints of the cows and Lord Krishna's footprints. Impressed with the signs of his soul, the flag, trident, thunderbolt, and lotus flower, upon seeing the footprints of Krishna, Akrura immediately jumped down from the chariot out of respect. He became overwhelmed with all the symptoms of ecstasy. He wept and his body trembled. Out of extreme jubilation, upon seeing the dust touched by the lotus feet of Krishna, Akrura fell flat on his face and began to roll on the ground. Akrura's journey to Vrindavan is exemplary. One who intends to visit Vrindavan should follow the ideal footsteps of Akrura and always think of the pastimes and activities of the Lord. As soon as one reaches the boundary of Vrindavan, he should immediately smear the dust of Vrindavan over his body without thinking of his material position and prestige. Narottam Das Thakur has sung in his celebrated song Vishaya Chaliya, Have Shuddhe Have Mana, when my mind will be purified after leaving the contamination of material sense enjoyment, I shall be able to visit Vrindavan. Actually, one cannot go to Vrindavan by purchasing a ticket. The process of going to Vrindavan is shown by Akrura. And even my spiritual teacher has made a point about wanting people to go to Vrindavan, but being careful about going to Vrindavan and not misunderstanding that somehow or another going to Vrindavan is to take the place of actually being in the presence of holy people. Sometimes people will go and they will see with their material eyes. They won't have the spiritual vision to see Vrindavan. They see, cows and mud and dirty people and lots of, whatever they might see, and they make a judgment about that. So actually, to go to Vrindavan, one, as pointed out here by Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, one should have, the mind should be purified, and that is done by the hearing and chanting of Krishna's names, and by so many other activities, being in present, hearing from the spiritual master, and listening to Krishna Katha, and so many other things that can be done in the service of Krishna to purify the mind. When Akrura entered Vrindavan, he saw Krishna and Balaram engaged in supervising the milking of the cows. Krishna was dressed in yellow garments and Balaram in bluish. Akrura also saw that Krishna's eyes were exactly like the beautifully grown lotus flower of the autumn season. He saw both Krishna and Balaram in the spring of their youth. Although both were similar in bodily features, Krishna was blackish in complexion, whereas Balaram was whitish. Both were the shelter of the goddess of fortune. They had well-constructed bodies, beautiful hands, and pleasing faces, and they were as strong as elephants. Now, after seeing their footprints, Akrura actually saw Krishna and Balaram face to face. Although they were the most influential personalities, they were glancing at him with smiling faces. Akrura could understand that both Krishna and Balaram had returned from tending cows in the forest. They had taken their baths and were dressed with fresh clothing and garlanded with flowers and necklaces made of valuable jewels. Their bodies were smeared with the pulp of sandalwood. Akrura greatly appreciated the aroma of flowers and sandalwood and their bodily presence. He considered himself very fortunate to see Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and his planetary expansion, Balaram, face to face, for he knew that they were the original personalities of the creation. As stated in the Brahma Samhita, Krishna is the original personality of Godhead and the cause of all causes. Akrura could understand that the Supreme Personality of Godhead appeared personally for the welfare of his creation, to re-establish the principles of religion and to annihilate the demons. With their bodily effulgence, the brothers were dissipating all the darkness of the world, as if they were mountains of sapphire and silver. Without hesitating, Akrura immediately got down from his chariot and fell flat, just like a rod before Krishna and Balaram. Upon touching the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he became overwhelmed with transcendental bliss. His voice choked up and he could not speak. Due to Krishna's transcendental presence, incessant torrents of tears fell from his eyes. He remained stunned in ecstasy, as if devoid of all powers to see and speak. Lord Krishna, who was very kind to his devotee, raised Akrura with his hand and embraced him. It appeared that Lord Krishna was very pleased with Akrura. Balaram also embraced Akrura. Taking him by the hand, Krishna and Balaram brought him to their sitting room, where they offered him a very nice sitting place and water for washing his feet. They also worshipped him with suitable presentations of honey and other ingredients. When Akrura was thus comfortably seated, both Krishna and Balaram offered him a cow in charity, and then brought very palatable dishes of eatables, and Akrura accepted them. When Akrura was finished eating, Balaram gave him betel nut and spices, as well as pulp of sandalwood, just to make him more pleased and comfortable. The Vedic system of receiving a guest was completely observed by Lord Krishna himself to teach all others how to receive a guest at home. It is a Vedic injunction that even if a guest is an enemy, he should be received so well that he does not apprehend any danger from the host. If the host is a poor man, he should at least offer a straw mat as a sitting place and a glass of water to drink. Krishna and Balaram welcomed Akrura, just befitting his exalted position. After Akrura was thus properly received and seated, Nanda Maharaj, the foster father of Krishna, said, "My dear Akrura, what shall I inquire from you? I know that you are being protected by Kamsa, who is most cruel and demoniac. His protection is just like the slaughterhouse keeper's protection of animals. He will kill in the future. Kamsa is so selfish that he has killed the sons of his own sister, so how can I honestly believe that he is protecting the citizens of Mathura? This statement is most significant. If the political or executive heads of the state are simply interested in themselves, they can never look after the welfare of the citizens." A very important political point. Many politicians are actually more interested in themselves. As Nanda Maharaj spoke to Akrura with pleasing words, Akrura forgot all the fatigue of his day's journey from Mathura to Vrindavan. Thus ends the Bhaktivedanta purport of the 37th chapter of Krishna, Akrura's arrival in Vrindavan. So we'll just continue on. Chapter 38. Akruras return journey and his visiting of Vishnuloka within the Yamuna River. Akrura was warmly received by Lord Krishna and Nanda Maharaj and offered a resting place for the night. In the meantime, the two brothers, Balaram and Krishna, went to take their supper. Akrura sat on his bed and began to reflect that all the desires which he had anticipated while coming from Mathura to Vrindavan had been fulfilled. Lord Krishna is the husband of the goddess of fortune. Being pleased with his pure devotee, he can offer whatever the devotee desires. But the pure devotee does not ask anything from the Lord for his personal benefit. After taking their supper, Krishna and Balaram came to bid good night to Akrura. Krishna asked about his maternal uncle Kamsa. How is he dealing with his friends? And he asked, how are my relatives? He also inquired into Kamsa's plan. The Supreme Personality of Godhead then informed Akrura that his presence was very much welcomed. He inquired from him whether all his relatives and friends were well and free from all kinds of ailments. Krishna stated that he was very sorry that his maternal uncle was the head of the kingdom. He said that Kamsa was the greatest anachronism in the whole system of government, and that they could not expect any welfare for their citizens while he ruled. Then Krishna said, "My father has undergone much tribulation simply from my being his son. For this reason also he has lost many other sons. I think myself so fortunate that you have come as my friend and relative. My good friend Akrura, please tell me the purpose of your coming to Vrindavan." After this inquiry, Akrura, who belonged to the dynasty of Yadu, explained the recent events in Mathura, including Kamsa's attempt to kill Vasudeva, the father of Krishna. He related the things which happened after the disclosure by Narada that Krishna was the son of Vasudeva. Sitting by him in the house of Nanda Maharaj, Akrura narrated all the stories regarding Kamsa. He told how Narada met Kamsa and how he himself was deputed by Kamsa to come to Vrindavan. Akrura explained to Krishna that Narada had told Kamsa all about Krishna's being transferred from Mathura to Vrindavan just after his birth, and about his killing all the demons sent by Kamsa. Akrura then explained to Krishna the purpose of his coming to Vrindavan, to take him back to Mathura. After hearing of these arrangements, Balaram and Krishna, who are very expert in killing opponents, mildly laughed at the plans of Kamsa. Of course, and this is one thing again, demons always are, planning, trying to overcome God's law, trying to overcome God and trying to be sneaky in their way of prolonging their life or their power. And so this is why they laugh, because Krishna and Balaram are expert in killing demons. They asked Nanda Maharaj to invite all the cowherd boys to go to Mathura to participate in the ceremony known as Danyur Yajna. Kamsa wanted them all to go there to participate in the function. On Krishna's word, Nanda Maharaj at once called for the cowherd boys and asked them to collect all kinds of milk preparations and milk to present in the ceremony. He also sent instructions to the police chief of Vrindavan to tell all the inhabitants about Kamsa's great Danyur Yajna function and invite them to join. Nanda Maharaj informed the cowherd boys that they would start the next morning. They therefore arranged for the cows and bulls to carry them all to Mathura. When the gopis saw that Akrura had come to take Krishna and Balaram to Mathura, they became overwhelmed with anxiety. Some of them became so grieved that their faces turned black, and that they began to breathe warmly and had palpitations of the heart. They discovered that their hair and dress immediately loosened. Hearing the news that Krishna and Balaram were leaving Mathura, others who were engaged in household duties stopped working as if they had forgotten everything, like a person who is called forth to die and leave this world at once. Others immediately fainted due to separation from Krishna. Remembering his attractive smile and his talks with them, the gopis became overwhelmed with grief. They all remembered the characteristics of the personality of Godhead, how he moved within the area of Vrindavan, and how, with joking words, he attracted all their hearts. Thinking of Krishna and of their imminent separation from him, the gopis assembled together with heavy beating hearts. Completely absorbed in thought of Krishna, tears fell from their eyes. They began to converse as follows: "O Providence, you are so cruel. It appears that you do not know how to show mercy to others. By your arrangement, friends contact one another, but without fulfilling their desires, you separate them. This is exactly like children's play that has no meaning. It is very abominable that you arranged to show us beautiful Krishna, whose bluish curling hair beautifies his broad forehead and sharp nose, who is always smiling to minimize all contention in this material world, and then arranged to separate him from us. O Providence, you are so cruel. But most astonishingly, you appear now as Akrura, which means not cruel. In the beginning, we appreciated your workmanship in giving us these eyes to see the beautiful face of Krishna, but now, just like a foolish creature, you are trying to take out our eyes so we may not see Krishna here again. Krishna, the son of Nanda Maharaj, is also very cruel. He must always have new friends. He does not like to keep friendship for a long time with anyone. We gopis of Vrindavan have left our homes, friends, and relatives have become Krishna's maidservants. but he is neglecting us and going away. He does not even look upon us, although we are completely surrendered unto him. Now all the young girls in Mathura will have the opportunity. They are expecting Krishna's arrival, and they will enjoy his sweet, smiling face and will drink its honey. Although we know that Krishna is very steady and determined, we are threatened that as soon as he sees the beautiful faces of the young girls of Mathura, he will forget himself. We fear he will become controlled by them and will forget us, for we are simple village girls. He will no longer be kind to us. We therefore do not expect Krishna to return to Vrindavan. He will not leave the company of the girls in Mathura. The gopis began to imagine the great functions in the city of Mathura. Krishna would pass through the streets, and the ladies and young girls of the city would see him from the balconies of their respective houses. Mathura city contained different communities known then as Dashara, Bhoja, Andaka, and Sattva. All these communities were different branches of the same family in which Krishna appeared, namely the Yadu dynasty. They were also expecting the arrival of Krishna. It had already been ascertained that Krishna, who is the rest of the goddess of fortune and the reservoir of all pleasure and transcendental qualities, was going to visit in Mathura city. The gopis then began to condemn the activities of Akrura. They stated that he was taking Krishna, who was more dear than the dearest to them, and who was the pleasure of their eyes. He was being taken from their sight without their being informed or solaced by Akrura. Akrura should not have been so merciless, but should have taken compassion on them. The gopis went on to say the most astonishing feature is that Krishna, the son of Nanda, without consideration, has already seated himself on the chariot. From this it appears that Krishna is not very intelligent. Yet he may be very intelligent, but he is not very civilized. Not only Krishna, but all the cowherd men are so callous that they are already yoking the bulls and calves for the journey to Mathura. The elderly persons in Vrindavan are also merciless. They do not take our plight into consideration and stop Krishna's journey to Mathura. Even the demigods are very unkind to us. They are not impeding his going to Mathura. The gopis prayed to the demigods to create some natural disturbance, such as a hurricane, storm, or heavy rainfall, so that Krishna could not go to Mathura. They then began to consider, despite our elderly parents and guardians, we shall personally stop Krishna from going to Mathura. We have no other alternative than to take this direct action. Everyone has gone against us to take away Krishna from our sight. The gopis are like the first revolutionaries. Just stop Krishna. Without him, we cannot live for a moment. The gopis thus decided to obstruct the passage through which the chariot of Krishna was supposed to pass. They began to talk among themselves. We have passed a very long night, which seemed only a moment, engaged in the rasa dance with Krishna. We were looking at his sweet smile and were embracing and talking. Now how shall we live even for a moment if he goes away from us? At the end of the day, in the evening, along with his elder brother Balaram, Krishna would return home with his friends. His face would be smeared with the dust raised by the hooves of the cow, and he would smile and play on his flute and look upon us so kindly. How shall we be able to forget him? How shall we be able to forget Krishna, who is our life and soul? He has already taken away our hearts in so many ways through our days and nights, and if he goes away, there is no possibility of our continuing to live. Thinking like this, the gopis became more and more grief-stricken at Krishna's leaving Vrindavan. They could not check their minds, and they began to cry loudly, calling the different names of Krishna. Oh, dear Damodar, dear Madhava. The gopis cried all night before the departure of Krishna. As soon as the sun rose, Akrura finished his morning bath, got on the chariot, and began to start for Mathura with Krishna and Balaram. Nanda Maharaj and the cowherd men got up on the bullock carts after loading them with milk preparations such as yogurt, milk, and ghee, filled in big earthen pots, and began to follow the chariot of Krishna and Balaram. In spite of Krishna's asking them not to obstruct the way, all the gopis surrounded the chariot and stood up to see Krishna with pitiable eyes. Krishna was very much affected upon seeing the plight of the gopis, but his duty was to start for Mathura, for this was foretold by Narada. Krishna therefore consoled the gopis. He told them that they should not be aggrieved. He was coming back very soon after finishing his business, but they could not be persuaded to disperse. The chariot, however, began to head west, and as it proceeded, the minds of the gopis followed it as far as possible. They watched the flag on the chariot as long as it was visible. Finally, they could see only the dust of the chariot in the distance. The gopis did not move from their places, but stood until the chariot could not be seen at all. They remained standing still as if they were painted pictures. All the gopis decided that Krishna was not returning immediately, and with greatly disappointed hearts, they returned to their respective homes. Being greatly disturbed by the absence of Krishna, they simply thought all day and night about his pastimes and thus derived some consolation. The Lord, accompanied by Akrura and Balaram, drove the chariot with great speed towards the bank of the Yamuna. Simply by taking a bath in the Yamuna, anyone can diminish the reaction of his sinful activities. Both Krishna and Balaram took their baths in the river and washed their face. After drinking the transparent, crystal clear water of the Yamuna, they took their seats again on the chariot. The chariot was standing underneath the shade of big trees, and both brothers sat down there. Akrura then took their permission to also take bath in the Yamuna. According to Vedic ritual, after taking bath in the river, one should stand at least half submerged and murmur the Gayatri mantra. While he was standing in the river, Akrura suddenly saw both Balaram and Krishna within the water. He was surprised to see them there because he was confident that they were sitting on the chariot. Confused, he immediately came out of the water and went to see where the boys were, and he was very surprised that they were sitting on the chariot as before. When he saw them on the chariot, he began to wonder whether he saw them in the water. He therefore went back to the river. This time he saw not only Balaram and Krishna there, but many of the demigods and all the Siddhas, Charanas, and Gandharvas. They were standing before the Lord, who was lying down. He also saw the Sheshananga with thousands of hoods. Lord Sheshananga was covered with bluish garments, and his necks were all white. The white necks of Sheshananga appeared exactly like a snow-capped mountain. On the curved lap of Sheshananga, Akrura saw Krishna sitting very soberly with 4 hands. His eyes were like the reddish petals of the lotus flower. In other words, after returning, Akrura saw Balaram turned into Sheshanaga and Krishna turned into Mahavishnu. He saw the 4-handed Supreme Personality of Godhead smiling very beautifully. He was very pleasing to all, and was looking towards everyone. He appeared beautiful with raised nose, broad forehead, spread up ears, and reddish lips. His arms, reaching to the knees, were very strongly built. His shoulders were high, his chest very broad and shaped like the conch shell. His navel was very deep, and his abdomen was marked with 3 lines. His waist was broad and big, resembling the hips of a woman, and his thighs resembled the trunks of elephants. The other parts of his legs, the joints and lower extremities, were all very beautiful. The nails of his feet were dazzling, and his toes were as beautiful as the petals of the lotus flower. His helmet was decorated with very valuable jewels. There was a nice belt around his waist, and he wore a sacred thread across his broad chest. Bangles were on his hands and armlets on the upper portion of his arms. He wore bells on his ankles. He possessed dazzling beauty, and his palms were like the lotus flower. He was still more beautiful with different emblems of the Vishnu Murti, the conch shell, club, disc, and lotus flower, which he held in his 4 hands. His chest was marked with the particular signs of Vishnu, and he wore fresh flower garlands. All in all, he was very beautiful to look at. Akura also saw his lordship surrounded by intimate associates like the four Kumaras, Sanaka Sanatan, Sananda, and Sanat Kumara, and other associates like Sunanda, Nanda, and as well as demigods like Brahma and Lord Shiva. The nine great learned sages were there, and devotees like Prahlad and Narada were engaged in offering prayers to the Lord with clean hearts and pure words. After seeing the transcendental personality of Godhead, Akura immediately became overwhelmed with great devotion, and all over his body there was transcendental shivering. Although for the moment he was bewildered, he retained his clear consciousness and bowed down his head before the Lord. With folded hands and faltering voice, he began to offer prayers to the Lord. Thus ends the Bhaktivedanta purport of the 38th chapter of Krishna, Akruras' return journey and his visiting of Vishnuloka within the Yamuna River. Okay, wow, this is great. We're just doing a lot of reading today, not much talking, because the story is so wonderful. Let's get into a couple of these prayers here. Prayers by Akura. Akura offered his prayers as follows. My dear Lord, I here pay my respectful obeisances unto you because you are the supreme cause of all causes and the original inexhaustible personality, Narayan. From your navel a lotus flower grows, and from that lotus Brahma, the creator of this universe, is born. Since Brahma is the cause of this universe, you are the cause of all causes. All the elements of this cosmic manifestation, earth, water, fire, air, ether, ego, and the total material energy, as well as nature, the marginal energy, the living entities, the mind, senses, the sense objects, and the demigods who control the affairs of the cosmos are all produced from your body. So that's a very, very deep subject. When we look at material science, it can't get much further than the Big Bang. You know, it has this idea that, you know, there was like this, somehow they don't know what happened before the Big Bang, but there was like all this stuff infinitely compressed, and then there was an explosion and all this stuff came and things started to manifest or come together. Well, that's not really that different, except for the missing parts, than how the Vedic science is explained, with Lord Brahma creating things. And from his sound, his mantras, the elements were already produced, they were already there, they were already inherent, and they were given by Krishna to Lord Brahma. Mahavishnu gave him all the information to manifest things, and so all these things they manifest together. There's a whole explanation in the Srimad Bhagavatam about this manifestation of elements. Now science itself will say that, but they don't really have any specifics. They just say there's this cosmic soup, and it's kind of like, you know, came together, and eventually there were, you know, planes and airplanes and Twitter, and it's like all these things came together, right? Just by chance. But actually, as we can see, all the elements, the material modes of material nature, all these things come from Krishna ultimately. And they're manifested in the universe, whatever universe there is, through the agency of Lord Brahma and the material energy of Durga. You are the super soul of everything, but no one knows your transcendental form. See, people don't know that. It's hidden. We live in an ocean of nescience right now, ignorance. The material world is a dark, dark world. We don't want to see Krishna, so therefore he's hidden from us. We don't know his transcendental form, but we can. We can by inquiring. Why am I suffering? How do I get out of this suffering? Everyone within this material world is influenced by the modes of material nature, goodness, passion, and ignorance, right? Demigods like Lord Brahma, being covered by the influence of material nature, do not exactly know your transcendental existence beyond the cosmic manifestation of the three modes of material nature. Even the great demigods do not know the total existence of Krishna. Great sages and mystics worship you as the supreme personality of God, the original cause of all living entities, all cosmic manifestation, and all demigods. They worship you as all-inclusive. Some of the learned Brahmanas also worship you by observing the ritualistic ceremony of the Rig Veda. They offer different kinds of sacrifices in the names of different gods. And there are others who are fond of worshiping transcendental knowledge. They are very peaceful and wish to give up all kinds of material activities. They engage themselves in philosophical search for you, known as Jnana Yoga. There are devotees known as Bhagavats, who worship you as the supreme personality of Godhead. After being properly initiated in the method of Pancharatra, they decorate their bodies with tilaks and engage worshiping your different forms of Vishnu Murti. There are others also known as Shaivites, followers of the different acharyas, who worship you in the form of Lord Shiva. It is stated in the Bhagavad Gita that worship of demigods is also indirect worship of the Supreme Lord. But such worship is not orthodox, because the worshipable Lord is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Narayan. Demigods such as Brahma and Shiva are incarnations of the material qualities, which are also emanations from the body of Narayan. Actually, there was no one existing before the creation except Narayan, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The worship of the demigod is not on the level with the worship of Narayan. So that's a very important point. There are Hindus who will worship any demigod, or sometimes they'll just pick your form, and they actually believe in an impersonal, formless aspect of Brahman that's beyond the forms of deities. But that's refuted in the Vedas itself, so that's not a real philosophy. Akruras said, although the minds of those who are devotees of the demigods are fixed on a particular demigod, because you are the supersoul of all living entities, including the demigods, worship of demigods indirectly goes to you. Sometimes after flowing down from the mountains during the rainy season, small rivers fail to reach the sea. Some reach the sea and some do not. Similarly, the worshippers of the demigods may or may not reach you. There is no guarantee. Their success depends on the strength of their worship. So there are some who are demigod worshippers, but their worship may be very, very strong and fixed. So they may elevate into their next life or next past former lives ahead, where they actually may be elevated gradually because of their and this is actually said that someone who is worshiping even on a very, very animistic level of religion, like worshiping rocks, if they're doing it very, very nicely and devotedly, full-heartedly, they will be elevated spiritually. That doesn't mean it's on the same par as worshiping Krishna, but it does help elevate, depending on the faith of the worshiper. According to Vedic principles, when a worshiper worships a particular demigod, he also conducts some ritual for Narayan, Yajneshvara. For it is mentioned in the Bhagavad Gita that demigods cannot fulfill the desires of their worshippers without the sanctions of Narayan. So even people who are worshiping demigods, the demigods still have to evoke the appeal to Krishna to actually give that person what they want. So it's really not up to the demigods. The exact words used in the Bhagavad Gita are Mayalapa Vihitan Hitan, which means that the demigods can award some benediction after being authorized by the Supreme Lord. When the demigod worshipper comes to his senses, he can reason as follows. The demigod can offer benediction only after being empowered by the Supreme Lord. So why not worship the Supreme Lord directly? Why not? That's kind of a duh factor. That's why Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, it's not the less intelligent worship demigods. Worshippers of the demigods may come to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but others who take to the demigods as all in all cannot reach the ultimate goal. And this is a wonderful prayer. I'm just going to continue on next time. And so thank you very much. We're going to chant a little bit. Okay, Haribo, we'll pick up from next time on our story. Thank you very much.